Wow, I think I have dozens of them, but let me go 15 years back and when.
Welcome to Values Beyond Time, a podcast about personal development, marketing, and entrepreneurship, exploring timeless principles that have a lasting impact. Let's go beyond the noise and discover what really matters.
Welcome back to another episode of Values Beyond Time, the podcast where we dive deep into timeless values that influence personal development, marketing, and entrepreneurship. In a world of fleeting trends and technological advancements, we are here to focus on what truly matters and how values shape our work, life, and success. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Professor Daniel Sa, the director of IPAM Porto, a well-known expert in both marketing and education, and a recent author. Daniel has always stayed at the forefront of marketing innovation and has dedicated himself to shaping the future of marketing education in Portugal. Under Daniel's leadership, IPAM Porto has grown significantly to become one of the most respected marketing and business schools in Portugal. He's also a recognized leader in sports marketing and recently published a book in 2024 called Marketing Desportivo, Mais do que jogo, Sports Marketing More Than a Game, addressing some of the most pressing questions about marketing in the digital age. In today's conversation, we will explore how AI is changing marketing and education, but we'll also touch on the human side of things, how values, both personal and professional, play a central role in making meaningful progress in a fast-paced world of marketing and entrepreneurship. We'll also dive into the exciting world of sports marketing and discuss Daniel's perspective on how sports can be leveraged in business and education to bring powerful engagement, authenticity, and connection. Daniel, very welcome to the show.
Hi, Marco. It's very nice to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
Very well. If your journey in marketing and education had a theme song or movie title, what would it be and why?
Well, I probably would say one of my favorite artists, who is a guy called David Bowie. I think he was a great artist with great songs, with great lyrics. And probably I would choose the song Heroes because it's a very beautiful song with a very deep message inside on it. So everybody from my age knows the music. Heroes basically intends to express the idea of trying to be your hero every day and be happy. It's a simple message, but I think it's because I like it a lot, and I would choose it.
Oh, lovely. I know him and I respect him a lot. So you've been in the marketing industry for a long time, and with AI now reshaping everything, how do you see human creativity and technology working together in marketing moving forward?
Well, I would say I have any doubts about is going to happen. The only thing I know for sure is that is going to happen, of course. I'm in this industry for almost 25 years. And when I look to the past, I would say when internet came to our classes 20 years ago, it was a huge change because there was a world without internet in the past. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So internet had a huge impact in our lives and education also. And I'm pretty sure that AI will redefine, reshape the way we teach and the way we learn. So lots of things to understand, to wait, to maturate, to try to understand how teachers, how students will bring it, will use it. But it's pretty sure that we are already in today's classes feeling this. You are feeling it, of course. So everybody's trying to understand what is the best way to introduce AI to our lives and in education. But I think we are going to have a new path of learning in the future. I'm pretty sure of that.
Very well. So, based on that, do you think AI is going to be a threat to human intuition, or can it be a complementary in a meaningful way?
Yeah, my romantic response is that it's going to be complementary, that robots and machines are not going to destroy our lives and so on. So basically, they should enter our lives to help us and not to destroy us. But I think there's some risks, of course, when we listen and when we read the guys that are in the front of this wave in AI, we understand that are some risks, some doubts, some limitations, lots of things that are unknown at this moment. But I think and I have faith in humankind and the human capabilities of addressing, embracing AI and turn our lives better. That's pretty much what I believe.
Very well. I agree with you. Last year, I was at IPAM and we celebrated your new book, Marketing Desportivo. It was a pleasure to be there. It was a successful launch.
Thank you.
In your book, you talk about foundational values that drive marketing today. So let's talk about that. And how do you think values like authenticity, integrity play a role, because AI is also coming in and automation is coming in? How can they together? Are they in conflict with each other or are they complementing each other?
I think they are everything: authenticity, integrity. They are not superficial issues. That these are the most important things today, because you are looking today, Marco, at the news. You don't know if the news is real or fake. You go online to social media. You don't understand. You're interacting with people or with robots or machines. So more than ever, I think authenticity is a key issue for marketing, for companies, for business, for brands, for sports, because we are people. No, we have feelings. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are sad. So we are not going to be replaced by robots or humans. I think marketeers and people who have responsibilities managing brands need to address the authenticity theme, because if not, is not going to work. This is not a kind of a fashion thing. This is a structural issue for our lives, for our brands, and for people, in my opinion.
Very well. That's a very different perspective than what we usually hear from different experts in the field. So, continuing with that topic, what is the role of human touch when it comes to building brand loyalty? When it comes to marketing and especially using AI, of course, it helps and it facilitates creating content and everything. So, if we are combining human creativity and also AI, do you think people love to have still that human touch, simplicity, or do they want something like more AI or kind of robotic thing?
It's difficult to tell you, Marco, because I would say it depends of what age you are and what generation you are part of. Because if you are talking to a guy of 70 years old, or 50 years old, or a 30 years old, or a 15-year old, probably they would like to feel different things. We were born in different times, in different generations, in different worlds almost. So I would say it depends of your level, your stage, and your needs. I think we are going to see different combinations. Some people would like for more robotics, automation, and AI, and some people are going to feel more need for the personal touch in everything.
Very well. And let's come back to your specialty in sports marketing. This is my personal question, that is, I always wonder, which is something interesting for me. I'm very fascinated by the power of sports and how it can connect people. For example, I have a Portuguese friend who lives in London, and he's a big fan of sporting. So he comes to Lisbon for every single game. He flies there.
Wow. For every single game.
Every single game that Sporting plays, he flies from London to Lisbon. Not only that, he also flies to other cities or countries when the club is playing. He's a big sports fan. So, based on your experience, how can we build such a fan base? This is number one question. And the next one, it would be, imagine if you were to start a brand new football club. How would you make it such a huge, lovely club that everyone would love to be part of?
These are very interesting questions, Marco, because probably you've touched the most important characteristic of sports, or you've talked about universality of sports. Of course, everybody understands it's a global thing in poor or rich countries, in African, American, Europe, and so on. But the main characteristic, I would say, is the emotional thing that we have in sports. And your friend, how is it possible for a guy that lives in London, has that kind of behavior and flies to Lisbon every week to see sporting? That's an emotional connection that most of our brands in our lives, we cannot feel the same connection. For instance, your friend probably is a guy who can cry for sporting, but I would say he cannot cry for Zara, for Apple, for Tesla, because he doesn't have the same kind of connection to those brands. So this is very important for people who work in this industry. When you say, how can I build a new club and engage fans all over the world? Again, authenticity, of course, and develop the emotional connection that you can have with them, knowing that in sports, you cannot win every game. Nobody wins every game. So you have to deal the emotional side when things are not doing so well, and you have to balance and engage people around the brand itself, because in a long period that's what's going to make the difference.
Yeah. So emotional connection, that's the key word, which I think a lot of people feel it, but they cannot express it, obviously. You can see a lot of fans cry when a team wins or even when the team loses. So coming back to sports marketing, from your experience, what makes sports marketing unique? And how can brands build stronger, more authentic relationship with fans?
I tend to look not to sports itself, but to the entertainment industry, which is wider than sports. That's why I think that Mickey Mouse, Taylor Swift, and Cristiano Ronaldo are part of the same industry. They are in the industry of entertaining people. Okay. Mickey Mouse does funny things, Taylor Swift sings, and Cristiano Ronaldo scores, but they are in the same industry, you know? So the biggest advantage that I think sports has compared with the other industries is, of course, the emotional connection, because we tend to be very involved, very emotional, and have a very high sense of belonging with our clubs, with our favorite athletes. When we look at the last 3 decades managing sports industry, you understand that lots of marketing and business professionals entering the industry and help the clubs to develop this emotional connection and monetize it, of course.
Very well. So, how can we do this on a personal level? For example, if you think about yourself, can you share a story of how you've seen a sports brand authenticity connect with you or with the audience? And how does that approach differ from traditional marketing?
Well, probably I've seen it on a weekly basis. I would have thousands of examples. Let me share with you 2 examples. The moment when Ayrton Senna died, it was 30 years ago, and a big part of this world got very emotional when we think about it, because he was a legend. He was in the peak of his career, and he died in a very tragic way. So you have a pilot who disappeared 30 years ago, and the brand Ayrton Senna remains today in our lives with a huge impact. And the second example I can share with you is every time a football club, for instance, loses a game and goes to descend in the next season, they are not they have the capability to stay in the first league, and they go to the second league. So this is a tragic moment, but when you see that happen, typically you see that the fans get even more involved, get even more emotional, and they express even more their loyalty to their club. It's very, very emotional to see when that happens.
That makes sense. So imagine if someone comes to you and he's an investor and has some money and they say that I would like to start a new, let's say, entertainment. It can be football, sports, it can be any type of entertainment. Based on your experience as a marketing professional, what do you recommend they to invest in?
I would say you have thousands of different options. I do not have the perfect choice, but for me, the rationale is very simple. Understand the market and target your product, and that's it. Okay, you have lots of different options. Don't try to sell technology to old people. Don't try to sell disruptional things to conservative people and so on. So this is basic marketing. There's a lot of different options, but the real thing is because you have a lot of fragmentation these days in the market. So understand very well what do people need and want and address them with a very nice service or product. And that's it.
So you've been leading EPAM through tremendous growth. I've been part of it, and I'm very proud to be part of the school, and I really enjoy working there. So how do you ensure that our students not only learn the technical aspects of marketing, but also develop the values that will guide them in their career?
Yeah, for many, many years, Marco, we felt that theory and the academical approaches and scientific bases and so on, those are pillars that are very important in education, of course. But for many, many years, we've understood that soft skills, motivation, drive, and so on are more important than technical skills. So for many, many years in IPAM, we had this concern of trying to spend time developing people and not only marketing or business professionals. So we are doing that in many and different ways. And we are happy with the results because we feel that we are preparing good people to go to companies and create value.
Very well. And with the rise of AI in education, how do you see the role of AI in shaping the next generation of marketeers?
Oh, wow. It's a new era, of course, because when you look at the main marketing technicalities, you easily understand that machines are going to do many of those technicalities faster, better, and cheaper. Everybody talks about the example of posting on social media. So, yes, of course, robots and machines are going to do it in a very effective way, better than humans. So, of course, AI and technology are already reshaping marketing, and IPAM has a leading school in this field. We are trying to anticipate the future and change our courses, developing new programs, all of them trying to go faster and try to help our students to understand better than anyone that what is going to happen in the future. And that's it. We spend a lot of time. If I basically work 8 hours a day, like many people, I try to spend many hours as possible trying to understand the future, trying to think about the future. I have a very common phrase that we usually share here in IPAM almost on a weekly basis, which is we are in 2025, but please teach for people in 2030. Try to push our students to think about this, about the world in 2030. So try to live today thinking 5 years ahead. That's the way we are trying to doing this in IPAM.
Yeah, I personally admire your vision because I have had the pleasure of working with you. And I think you are quite visionary, and how you see the market and introducing new courses is quite amazing because EPAM is at the forefront of offering new courses to the market. How do you think the teaching career will change? Do we still need professors, teachers in 5 years from now?
I hope so, Marco. I need the teachers, you know. For me, it's very difficult to try to figure it out without teachers or less teachers, of course. But I understand your question. It's a great question. So, is it possible to have in the future a robot teaching marketing? I would say yes, I think it's possible, and probably with a more effective result than you or me or any other teacher. Yes, I believe that. Are schools going to have this kind of rotation? I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, I think we have to manage and combine people and machines. Okay, that's it. But I think what is going to change a lot is the role of the teacher. Okay, so you are not the guardian of knowledge, you or me, you are not the guardian. You have to be a kind of curator of the information. And of course, you and I should use technology to improve our classes, to improve the learning capabilities of our students, to get them motivated, enthusiastic about it, to bring more feedback from their learning and so on. And technology can help us and should help us do this.
So, continuing with that topic, what do you think our students really need as skill sets when they are going to the market to navigate this very competitive job market?
I think two things. First, they have to think, and that's the biggest risk on AI is everybody gets some lazy mood and decide that technology answers everything. So people should be trained to think even more and question everything because they have to have a critical judgment on everything. And the second thing that I think is important is like in sports, you have to practice every day. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the biggest sports players in the world, in the history of sports, but he trains every day in a very intensive way because he's only going to stand being that great player, continue training every day. And we have to do it in companies, in the corporate world also. So I think people have to think and practice, and that's it.
Very well. Critical thinking, as you mentioned, is quite foundational. So, talking about EPAM and marketing, what do you think is missing in the Portuguese market and business landscape?
A culture of branding. We are not so strong in Portugal branding, doing this art of managing brands, you know, because we are good producers. We can make shoes, wine, cork, food, even technology things and so on. But if you look at the history of Portugal, I think we do not have the capability of branding ourselves, not as the biggest and the best country of the world, because we are not, and every country has its own values. But I think we have a big margin to improve branding our products, branding our people, branding our country, and so on. The biggest failure I see in our country.
Yeah, very well. I agree with you because that's one of my objectives with this podcast is to portray Portuguese, heroes and heroines to the outside world, and to say that okay, we have a lot to share with the world. And I think part of the Portuguese culture is that they are very humble, and sometimes they are a bit conservative. They do not present themselves really well and confidently. Meanwhile, they have a lot to present. And I totally agree with you, and I appreciate what you are sharing with our audience. So, since you have a really critical position in the market because you and the team are educating the next generation, how can we instill these skill sets in the next generation, in the students who can build new things and build a brand not only for Portugal but also regionally and globally?
I would say we need to adapt to this generation because they live in a different way. So when I look at teachers and students, I look at two different tribes, of course, but in these days, I think they almost live in different worlds. So there's a huge gap generation, in my opinion, and I would advise every educator, every school, every university to mind the gap, to try to understand how can this generation live, feel, and create value in companies. So I would say this is kind of a romantic statement, but I'm a romantic guy, and I think we lack of romanticism in companies because it's only data, reports, and data, and you need to be and to have a kind of romantic mood in companies and in schools also. So that's my suggestion.
I agree with you because that's where the future is. So, as the marketing industry is evolving every day and the speed of technology is also creating some kind of anxiety in marketeers, it's really difficult to catch up with all these innovations. How do you balance speed, innovation, and integrity in marketing campaigns and education?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges today, Marco, in universities and in companies. So I do not know the answer, but I'm very concerned about that. Of course, I'm a 49-year-old guy. One of my biggest concerns in my activity, I would say, is technology management. Trying to stay updated, which is impossible to be updated with technology because you are always one step behind everything, and try to balance these technology needs with the things you have to do, the strategic one, the operational things you have to do. So probably that is one of our biggest challenges these days, how to do technology management. And that's why in IPAM we are preparing new programs about this, because we think this is one of the biggest issues of the corporate world these days, and we need to help people address this.
Very well. So, looking at your journey in marketing and education, can you share a moment when you had to make a difficult decision that tested your values? And how did that shape your leadership style or approach?
Wow, I think I have dozens of them, but let me go 15 years back and when the Bologna process entered in Europe. So Bologna process was a huge process involving dozens of countries in Europe and basically had two dimensions. One, I would call it an administrative dimension because you have a kind of harmonization in the different systems in different countries in Europe and some part of legal and formal issues, which in my opinion is the easiest dimension, because the hardest dimension was improving the way of teaching 15 years ago. And one of the challenges that I had was 15 years ago, I had great teachers in IPAM, but I understood they were not going to be the future teachers with the Bologna process. So I had hard decisions those days, trying to keep or not some teachers in our team because basically they were good in the past. And in that time, I was pretty sure they were not going to be good in the future. That was a big challenge for me at the time.
And how do you come to that realization? How do you have that vision? As a leader, how do you see people and how do you read people?
Well, I would say experience gives you lots of learnings, that gives you lots of different senses on that. Considering that I work this industry for 25 years, and considering that if a kid, an 8-year-old kid, comes to IPAM next September, and I'm thinking that he's going to be a marketing professional within 5 years, starting his career in 5 years. So I was trained always to think about the future. As I said again, I'm in 25, but my head is in 2030. I try to do this every time. So my reading about people is mainly focused on this. Is this teacher thinking in 2030? Is this company thinking in 2030? Is this kid thinking in 2030? Because I'm not going to have a degree to work in the past. I'm always going to work in the future, not in the past. This is basic. So I try to read people about the future. I try. Sometimes I do it well, and sometimes I don't, of course.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. That's very good. And I like the way that you envision the future. It reminds me of Jeff Bezos and how he manages Amazon building the quarter for the next year, basically. That's a very good approach. So, if you could leave our audience with one piece of advice about how to stay true to their values while embracing the opportunities and challenges of the future of marketing and sports marketing, what would that be?
Well, when we look at my book, that's my third book, launched last year, basically the main idea of the book was projecting the next decade in the sports industry. And this next decade is going to reshape lots of different things that we have seen for the last year. So the business model is going to change. The fans are going to change. The different sports are going to change. Competitions are going to change. I would say your friend in the future is not going to need to take a flight to go and see sporting, because technology will allow him from London to have almost the same kind of experience. So these are the different things that are going to happen in the future. Everybody that wants to work in this industry for the next decade should read my book and understand what's going to happen and prepare themselves for it.
Very well. I will share the information of the book with the audience in the podcast.
Thank you.
Looking ahead, how do you envision the future of IPAM Porto in the next 5 years?
Well, so we've started a new journey, a new strategic journey 3 years ago. Basically, IPAM celebrated 40 years last November, which is a lot when we think that the marketing programs was starting to be launched in the United States around 50 years ago. So there's a Portuguese marketing school with 40 years. So that's amazing. But basically, what we understood is that marketing is not just marketing these days. And that's the main idea that we are trying to develop IPAMs. We started 3 years ago a new strategic cycle when we started from this marketing field and we are heading to new different fields to this marketing centered school. So now we can say that IPAM has three significant pillars: marketing, business, and technology. Those are the three pillars that we started 3 years ago and that we can expect in the next 5 years to increase with programs, with unities, with courses, with events, with lectures, and so on. This is the new IPAM for the next 5 years: marketing, business, and technology. The three pillars that we think that companies and the corporate world will address in the future.
And what role do you want AI, marketing, business, and value-based education to play in shaping the future of IPAM?
Yeah, well, big deal. We are spending a lot of time figuring out how we are going to integrate AI in our academic model. We have already introduced different experiences these days with very good results, but we are with a specific team working a lot on the future again. And I would say every academic year we will introduce AI even more in our classes. So I'm really thrilled with this and hoping the future come very quickly to our classes.
Very well. So the next question will be about something that I personally receive, and I wanted to get your insight about it. Many students across the country, even outside in Portugal, different countries, they study the same program, the same materials, with the same professor, and they are competing for the same job. So what advice would you give them to stand out in the job market? How can they market and sell themselves effectively, especially when they are essentially learning the same things as their peers?
Yeah, it's true. I agree with you, Marco. Probably many of these kids are going to work in companies that currently do not exist, and in some jobs that at this moment they do not exist also. So the piece of advice is spend time looking at the future, because there are conferences, books, proceedings, articles, events, lots of different things that could help people try to understand the future. And if a kid understands better the future, he's going to do well in the job market, and he will know how to position himself in this market.
I think you have, how many kids do you have?
I have three.
So would you allow them to study marketing, or would you recommend them to study marketing?
Well, the other one studied marketing and digital business, so he is a kid that got interested in these fields. My daughter, in a very different path, she's in medicine, and the youngest one is too young to study this kind of fields. But yes, I would recommend marketing, of course, like an important field of knowledge and with huge opportunities in the future, of course.
So a personal question, if you could go back to your own journey, personal journey of professional work and also education, what would you do differently? If you could go back to, let's say, the age 18, 20, 25.
Probably risk more, because when we get older, we understand better the world, we know ourselves better. And of course, things were planned, things were not planned in the past. But looking at the past these days, I would say I could risk more, because the worst thing that can happen is failure. So no problem failing. I do sports, and in sports you fail a lot, and the best way to improve is learn with your failures, with your errors. So let's fail, no problem with that. I'm trying to figure it out, because in education many times your teaching module is about success about this, do this right, and it is not very common to train failures. And I'm trying to figure it out how to get into our programs, in our courses, in our class, in a systematic way, dealing with failure, because that's very important to improve and to learn.
Totally agree with you, because usually in the courses we teach about success stories, we never talk about failures. If you learn how other people failed, probably we can try to remove those components, learn from that, and then introduce new success. So let's wrap up this podcast with a couple of short questions. What is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport, it's volleyball. I played since I was 10 and I play it every week. So this is the most important thing for me in my life, even more important than my professional career. I really prefer sports to my professional career, for sure. I would be a volleyball professional if I could, but I was not good enough and I'm old.
No, you are too young. Come on, you are very young. So you're the best football team for you.
I would say not my personal taste, but I'm in love for the Brazilian football team in the 70s. Probably is the best football I have ever seen in my life. A very romantic football.
What was the name again? Which football club?
The Brazilian national team in the 70s with Pelé and all those guys. In my opinion, they were the best team ever in this sport.
And if you could pick any Portuguese club?
Oh, I would say Leixões, which is my hometown club from Matosinhos, is clearly the best club in the world.
Okay, cool, lovely. And your favorite football player of all time?
I would have to say the obvious Cristiano Ronaldo, not only for his pitch career, but also because of everything he has done off the pitch with this huge brand he is. So I would say Cristiano Ronaldo for sure.
Very well. What is the one value you will never compromise in your career?
I would say integrity. You have to be an integral person. I'm not capable to behave in another different way. And I think this is a structural value for everybody. I do not like to work with people with no integrity or companies or projects with no integrity. That's not for me, for sure.
AI or human creativity, which one will drive marketing forward?
Difficult question. I would say both, inevitably. I think success will depend on both.
And what is your why in one sentence?
Well, when I look to my career, I would say transforming people, because that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years, helping transforming people. And I love it because it's a very motivating industry and it gives you a very good sense of doing things right. So, yeah, helping transform people.
That's beautiful. And one piece of advice for young sports marketeer or marketeers just starting their career.
Understand the projects, understand the brands, listen to the fans and what the kind of needs and desires they have. That's it. Very easy to do.
Very well. And one mistake you're glad you made?
So many. It's very hard to choose because I have so many mistakes in my life. What should I say? Misreading people, bringing courses or programs that had any kind of success and so on. We can make a podcast with my list of biggest errors in my life. Many, many of them, for sure.
But can you think about any of them that you are glad you made?
For instance, bringing companies to our academic model in IPAM, a few times I've chosen the companies that were not first options, but at the end of the day, they were the best options because they were the most cooperative with us, that motivated our students. And so for a few times, the error turned in the success. Many times that happened, yes.
And if you could change one thing in marketing education, what would that be?
Well, I would go for hands-on in marketing. How should I teach someone about customer experience? So let's go to a Zara store with a student, bring the class to a Zara store and talk about consumer experience hands-on. That's it. I would say this is mandatory for any marketing program at this moment.
Yeah, I love that because I always say that marketing is like riding a bicycle. by reading a book, you will never learn how to ride a bicycle.
That's it. So true.
Very well. Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing your deep insight today. From AI in marketing to the human touch in sports marketing, we've covered a lot of ground. It's clear that values are at the core of everything we do today. And that's what will guide the next generation of marketeers, leaders, and entrepreneurs. So my final question for you would be, who would you nominate as a future guest for Values Beyond Time?
Wow. Let me suggest Pedro Santa Clara is also a guy from the education world. He runs a very successful project called 42. He was for many, many years a teacher in Universidad Nova. He was also a teacher in California for many, many years. And is an excellent example of a Portuguese guy in this industry and looking to the future, for sure.
Thank you so much for the introduction. For our listener, if you're navigating AI, sports marketing, or just trying to align your values with work, this episode is packed with wisdom. I will share the contact of Professor Daniel Sau with you. And until the next time, this is Marco Bagheri from Values Beyond Time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Values Beyond Time. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite platform. For more conversations, visit valuesbeyondtime.com. Until next time, stay hungry.